deal for your video. You can pause the video while you do so. The audio bitrate will depend on your channel settings. For stereo 5.1, set it to 512 kilobytes per second. For just stereo, set it to 384. And for mono, use 128 kilobytes per second. You can find all of this information, as well as some more advanced settings, in the Google Help Center. We'll post a direct link in the description. If this video was helpful to you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos about digital media technology. This video is brought to you by KenCode, the better cloud video transcoding solution. Get 500 minutes free by visiting kencode.com and utilize our highly scalable, low-cost, and fully customizable transcoding platform for your business today. Also, be sure to check out some of our other videos. Thank you for watching.
Вот это и совсем.
Я часто тревожусь. Как быть?
Психотерапевт, он помогает разобраться.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. So today we are going to tackle a long-standing request to do a history video on the composer Charles Valentin Alkan. Now, Alkan was a composer in the Romantic period. He was French, he was Jewish, and he was friends with guys like Franz Liszt and Chopin. But he is not nearly as famous as Liszt and Chopin. A composer in the Romantic period. He was for. So what we're going to talk about today is as Liszt and Chopin. I mean, you might Liszt and Chopin, but he is not nearly as famous as Liszt and Chopin. I mean, you might not have even heard his name before. So what we're going to talk about today is his life, and we're also going to postulate on why he isn't as famous, just like do a little speculation. So let's get started. Charles Alkan was born in 1813 in Paris to a very musical family. Charles Alkan's dad was a musician by trade, and he also started a private musical school later in life. And he also had 5 siblings who were equally musical, although Charles Alkan is the most well-known of them. There was like a flute player, and there were piano players, and composers, and like teachers, and like every single one of the siblings had musical talent. And like many other famous composers, Charles Alkan was a child prodigy. At the age of 7, he auditioned for the Paris Conservatoire on the piano, and one of the comments that the examiner wrote is, "This child has amazing abilities." And we all know how tough the examiners are. He wrote his first Opus 1 piano composition set when he was just 14 years old, and that's like, he was already starting to get serious at that age. When he was a teenager, he was performing all over Paris at salons, which were basically just like fancy rich people parties. He was helping his dad teach over at his dad's music school, and he was continuing his own studies. So I mean, like the work ethic kids had back in the day, right? Later in Charles's teenage years, he began integrating even more strongly into Paris's music art scene and became acquainted with people like George Sand. George Sand was a writer, and also Chopin's paramour, and Franz Liszt. They were all like late teenagers, early 20s when they met each other. Same with Chopin. So Charles Alkan met Chopin in 1832 when he was like around 20 years old, and they became fast friends. Charles continued writing and performing throughout his early 20s all across Paris, and he became pretty well known for it too. He was living at the Square d'Orléans, which is basically like an apartment block for famous people. Like Chopin lived there, and that's how they deepened their friendship. They got to see each other a lot and hang out, all that stuff. But in 1839, everything changed for Charles Alkan. He went on his first like retreat from the public life. So a couple things happened to cause this. The first thing that happened was he had a son. His son's name was Eli Miriam Delaborde, and let's just say that Delaborde was not a natural-born son. He was an illegitimate child to a wealthy piano student of Charles Alkin's. But let us say no more of this. I mean, honestly, it was wealthy piano. Delaborde was not a natural-born son. He was an illegitimate child to a wealthy piano student of Charles Alkin's. But let us say no more of this. I mean, honestly, it was Paris in the 1800s. It's not like no one had ever had an illegitimate child before, but Alkin took it pretty hard. Like, he was a pretty old-fashioned, strongly moral man. The birth of his son can't be blamed. For like all of the reasons that Charles Alkin went into seclusion, though, even though it's clearly a pretty big part of it. Another part of it, though, was that Charles Alkin was pretty unhappy with the musical situation in Paris in 1839. It was kind of like all glam and bombast, and like everyone was trying to outstage each other and outplay each other, and that just wasn't his scene. Like, even on Alkin's best days, he was a traditionalist at heart, and he wasn't really a big fan of like modern music, so it just made him angry. So in the early 1840s, Charles moved away from the square to Orleans, which meant that him and Chopin weren't living in the same place anymore, which means they just started communicating by letters and like through friends, like, hey, if you see Chopin, tell him that I think he's awesome. And I mean, they kept missing each other at social functions too, because like Chopin was frail and he got sick a lot, so like Alkin would be somewhere and Chopin would be sick. And then Chopin would be somewhere and Alkin would be like reclusive. So I mean, hashtag introvert life. But in 1840.